Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I just came across this story and it follows up, I guess it's an update on events that's been taking place in Syria with regards to the United States and the other governments talking about some level of intervention into that issue. At this point, you guys know my take on this. You know how I feel about it, so I'm not going to overly repeat the same thing. I am going to show the article though. Right here. United States, France, and Britain agree to respond to Syrian gas attack. I find this amazing, and I watch this like I'm pressed on a glass looking at events that are taking place. Distinct from those events, but at the same token apart from those events, because my country is part of those events. And at the end of the day, you have the three countries that were instrumental in turning Libya into a dumpster fire, to the point where they're literally selling Africans. Again, those countries are responsible. I now have come to some agreement on doing something similar in Syria. We want to fuck it up again. We didn't fuck that one up enough. So we want to go in and do something similar. At which point did the UK, France, and Britain become a world order unto themselves? Theresa May is a failed head of state. Donald Trump is a failed head of state. Macron has all sorts of protests right now raging all over France at some of the things he's trying to do to the auto unions. When did these people become the fulcrum of the world? When? When did this take place? When did international law say fuck all to international law? What about good sense? What about logical questions? When did all of that just not matter? We don't need evidence. We don't need investigation. We don't need any of those things. We're just going to respond. It doesn't matter that it makes no sense. The theory of the case makes no sense. They didn't know who did it in 2017. They didn't know who did it prior. And fact is, the only group that would likely try to pull something like this, knowing full well that it would get the international powers into the mix, because the international powers said prior that they would get into the mix of something like this happen, were the terrorists themselves. And we know that the terrorists themselves have access to this gas, the chlorine gas. The point that I'm making here is the theory that these guys, that the media is pushing out and that they're running with, is illogical as illogical can be. And the media has been uncritical, unskeptical of this very particular point of view, with the exception of Tucker Carlson, gold star to that, of this perspective. And it seems like they're inexorably stepping one step closer to the next, to the brink. Russia is not going to let the Syrian government collapse. Full stop. Full stop. And what does that mean when a nuclear power says no, and a nuclear power says yes? That's where we're at. That's where we're at. Let's take a look at this. This is brinksmanship on a level that is unprecedented. And if you're talking about getting yourself to the tip of war, if you believe that Russia is going to back down in this, I think you're insane. I think you're insane. I think war takes off with automatic processes. Things that leaders, people who are heads of those particular states, can't necessarily pull back. They can't pull back. I don't want us to get to that point. And crossing a particular red line when you haven't even investigated this red line is a way of getting us to that particular point. Fact is, they didn't have an investigation because they didn't care. They want Assad out that seat. That's the beginning and ending of this. They want him out that seat. All of these people are dubious actors. Theresa May, I have a question. How are you going to solve the hard Irish border problem with Brexit? Why don't you stew on that? The European Union is waiting for an answer. How are you going to do that? Fucking around, bombing other countries. Let's take a look at the story. Donald Trump, Emmanuel Macron, and Theresa May vowed to uphold the ban on chemical weapons. That's great. Seeing as the United States still has chemical weapons and Britain still has chemical weapons. Porting down. Still has chemical weapons. Hey, Theresa May, here's a question. Here's the question. The Novichok. How did you know that was Novichok? How would you be able to figure that out so fast? That's not curious. Is it possible that you guys have Novichok yourselves? And that you were able to compare it because you have those things? It is somewhat rich that countries that have chemical weapons is talking about a chemical weapons ban. You guys are clowns. You guys are absolute clowns. Theresa May joined the United States President Donald Trump and French leader Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday in warning that they will respond to the Syrian gas attack in order to uphold the global ban on chemical weapons. But you have chemical weapons. You have chemical weapons. How are you banning something that you have? In separate phone calls, the three allies agreed the international community should work closely together to make sure that the regime and its backers were held to account. You three make up the international community? When? Did you inform the other nations that you three made up the international community? The Prime Minister is facing mounting pressure from senior conservative MPs to support United States-led airstrikes against the regime. Jesus Christ. Sorry, it's hard to read here. The lightning going in. The Prime Minister is facing mounting pressure from senior conservative MPs to support the United States-led airstrikes against the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad after the suspected chemical attack in Douma that led to dozens of people, that killed dozens of people. Earlier, she chaired a meeting. See, wait a minute. Why don't you question that? Like, it's aggravating to read this. Like, why is that not questioned? She's facing mounting pressure. Okay, I understand. But is it legitimate? Is the fact that she's... How do you know? That's the first question that should be asked. How do you know that Bashar al-Assad was the person who did it? Why would he do it when he has no interest in doing this? Meaning, there's no advantage in doing this. Why is that just walked by? Why is that skimmed over? That's a big fucking deal. That's the crux of the argument they're making. I would make the argument that it doesn't matter if he did it. Even if he did do it. What is your justification and rationale for doing that? And what is the outcome of you doing that? How was it in Libya when you guys fucked up royally in that country? Why are you trying to do it again in Syria? Why? Why? You have no justification for doing this. You have no legitimacy to do this. Your own constitution, talking about the United States, does not allow you to do this. You can do this and Congress will shut up about it. But let's not pretend that you have some kind of legal grounds to do this. And it needs to be called out. The fact that this is even brought up for conversation. But even going on your own rules of things, going on your own basis of understanding the world. What evidence? What evidence? If you're not operating on evidence, what are you operating on? What evidence? What are you using? Theresa May, after a few days, came on and said Russia was guilty of poisoning a spy. And using the Theresa May logic, never provided evidence for the fact that they were poisoning a spy. Porton Down didn't even know. That's their own agency of chemical weapons. I'm making the point that you all are saying we need to create more horrors, just like we created in Libya, and this time we need to do it in Syria. And I'm making the point that the stakes in this are higher because Russia is backing the Syrian government. Call it a regime all you want to downplay it. It's a government. It's like saying the Trump regime or the Obama regime. They're governments. You may not like those governments. There may be bad people in those governments, but they're governments. We're bad people in our governments. You kill thousands of civilians. Don't act like you're a fucking angel. Let's keep going. A Downing Street spokesman said the calls, they agreed the reports of chemical weapons attack in Syria were utterly reprehensible and if confirmed, represented a further evidence of Assad regime's appalling cruelty against his own people and total disregard for the legal obligations not to use these weapons. It's just amazing to read. They agreed that the international community, you three are not the international community. You're not. You're not. There are more. There are more countries in the country than you, America, and France. The Guardian calling it in this way is propaganda. It is not the international community. And look, it's one thing if you guys said, we've done an investigation and we found that the Syrian government was responsible for this and we need to do something about it. Okay. Okay. But that's not where you are. You're just at blaming. Fuck the evidence. Blame. Blame. They did it. Pay no attention to the evidence. They did it. Pay no attention to logical thought that they have nothing to gain from it. They did it. He's just a monster. He's a horrible person. He has horns. When he goes to bed at night, He slaps his wife. All of these things. Yes, he's a bad guy. And he's such a bad guy that for whatever reason, after clearing 90% of the territory from ISIS, he now all of a sudden just wants to really stick it to him and gas his people for no political effect other than bringing in international powers or giving a pretext. Donald Trump attacked Syria last time, not knowing if the Syrian government did it. The fact is, the terrorists have access to chemical weapons. It is more likely that the terrorists release the chemical weapons. It is much more likely that the United States and these guys are using this as a reason to evict Assad out of the seat. You can say whatever things you want about Assad being a bad guy. The Constitution is not there for you to just remove willy-nilly bad guys. I don't know about British and French governments in regards to how they're organized, but the United States Constitution is not set for those things. If Trump is going to do that, he's doing that outside the bounds of the Constitution. And what I can tell you is that the people who support Trump are not on board, meaning the regular, everyday people who supported Trump, who said that this is a bad idea, that we shouldn't be going into this country, and shouldn't there be other people doing this. Trump should read his own tweets. Trump should read his own tweets. I would say, prove it. That's what I would say. Everybody is asserting this. Prove it. I understand your assertions. That's different than evidence. Let's see. Let's see who's here. Do you have a source, Shane? I've heard this, but I don't know yet. I haven't heard that. Please give a source. Okay, what did Shane say? I'm hearing that they've just started a massive attack. Anyone else hear the same? I haven't heard that yet. I haven't heard that yet. Yeah, Shane, I haven't heard that one yet. They just said there's going to be a response. So, all I'm saying is, hug your wife, hug your kids. Depending on what that response is, hug your wife, hug your kids. If anything happens, I will be back. Alright guys, you have a good one.